In this course, we'll be looking at how to make a car like this using the open source 3D software Blender. The course is divided into 4 separate videos. In the first and the second video, we will look at how to do the modeling from the overall shape of the car to the wheels and other smaller details. In the third part, we'll be talking about the shaders, mainly the car paint shader. And once we are done with that, we will also look at the basic rendering setup and the lighting. In the fourth part of this tutorial series, we'll be looking at how to make the animations that you have seen so far and also the other upcoming preview animations. There is no strict prerequisite for this tutorial series, but it's really good if you know the basic interface of Blender. Selecting, scaling, and doing the basic transformations, that really helps. But I've done my best, nevertheless, to explain each and everything that I do, and I think you will find it pretty easy to follow. In order to make the modeling process easier to approach, we are going to make the car one part at a time. In this particular video, we start from how to get the references and work our way up to the base model for the car. As a bonus, somewhere in the middle of this tutorial, we have a section on edge flow, which I think is very important. I really go in depth and we discuss very thoroughly how to do it on our model. All the reference images and anything else that I mentioned in this tutorial will be linked in the description below, so check that out. The final tutorial file with the model, material and the animations can be downloaded. It's available on my Gumroad account. In the process, of course, you'll be signed up to my weekly newsletter. Link is in the description below. Obviously, I would love to have you on it, but you can unsubscribe at any time. One last announcement before we get into the tutorial. I just published the online store for Blue Inversion. At the time of this recording, you can find smart shaders, grounds and roads. It's a shader pack containing 100% procedural shaders, which I think is a must-have if you make any kind of nature scenes in Blender, including ground shaders, pavements, and even roads. Once you buy it, you will keep receiving free updates forever, so check it out right now. Link is in the description. You will not be disappointed. And finally, this is Shayan, and you are watching Blue Inversion. Open up a new Blender file. I will click on the point lamp and delete it with X. Now, I will use the default cube as a guideline for the reference images. Before that, I will set the viewport display to where. You can press the accent grave key on your keyboard and access these views. I'm making sure I'm in the front view. Now I can press Shift A and under Image Reference, I will navigate to the reference folder. You can see that this is the image that I got from theblueprints.com. It's a preview. You can go ahead, follow the link in the description and buy the full resolution one. But I think the low resolution is good enough for this tutorial, so I will not go into any premium versions. As you can see, it comes like this. I've just cut them up into different views in GIMP. You can use Photoshop. It's a very trivial image editing process. So go ahead and make these separate images for yourself. I'll select the front reference image, scale it down to match the dimension of the cube. Now you can see that the height is not matching at all, so I will just scale the cube to match the height. It's done for the front view. I'll repeat this process for the other views. Right now I'm in the right view. I'll scale the cube along the y-axis because we haven't yet set the length of the car onto the cube. After this reference image is done, now we have the full 3 dimensions of the car: length, breadth and the height. So now for the other reference images, for example the top reference image, we just need to match it up to the cube. We are not going to touch the cube anymore. Select it and press R to rotate, and holding down the control key will give you a snappy effect, and this way you can snap it to 90 degrees easily without having to type 90 literally. And now I'll just scale it to fit. Let's go to the back view. You can see that we are able to see the other reference image even from the back side and from the front side. So we do not really want that. Make sure you select it, and we'll go to the properties here and change the side to front. Now you'll see that the reference image only shows up in the front side and not on the back side. So now we can go into the back view, Shift A, Image Reference. Let's select the back reference image, load it up, scale it down, and we are just repeating the same process here. And now we have finished making all the reference images, and we can get rid of the cube now. So I'll just delete it. Now let us select all of the reference images from the outliner and let's move them to a collection. I'll press M, new collection. Let's call it refs, references. I will get rid of the other ones. Get rid as in I'm hiding them in the viewport using the icon here. So this is the active selection right now. I'll change the settings here. We can set the depth to back, side to front. We have already done that. I don't want it to display in the perspective view, so I'll uncheck that. I'll give it some transparency. 0.7 will be fine. Bring back all the other reference images. You'll see they follow the same old settings that we had. That's fair enough. We just need to select everything. Make sure the first one is the active one that we just edited. And then just go to the settings, right click, copy to selected. Make sure you do this for all the settings that we changed. You'll see that all the reference images follow the same settings, which is exactly what we want. Now you can see that we can interact with the reference images in the viewport, which is not very good, especially when we'll be modeling over them. So what I want is I will just click here and make sure we have this selectable icon visible here. I will click here and this will disable selection in the viewport for all the members of this collection. So now you can see we cannot edit it in the viewport anymore. Perfect. I'll just collapse this collection here. It's a good time to save this Blender file. I already have it saved, so I'll just press Ctrl S to overwrite, or you can just go into the file and save. I will right click on the outliner, select new collection. Let's call it something like car body. We will have the car objects inside it. Make sure you have selected that. Let's go to the top view, press Shift A, mesh, and we'll add a plane. I will go into the edit mode with tab, grab it and place it here. Let's move these vertices up a little bit. So basically I'm going to start modeling from here. I'll press Ctrl R and add a loop cut here. Basically I'm bisecting the plane. And I will select these vertices, press X and delete them. Let's go to the modifiers and add a mirror modifier. Make sure you have the merge checkbox enabled. In that way, we do not have extra vertices and all that when we apply the modifier. Anyways, let's get back to the perspective view. This time I will add the solidify modifier, increase the thickness, and then I will add a subdivision surface modifier. Push it to 2, and that should be fine. I'll come back to the solidify modifier and increase the crease for inner and outer. Not all the way, because we just want a basic amount of crease, because later on we'll be adding crease to individual edges. I'll get to that. I'll right click and shade smooth. Make sure you're in the object mode when you do that. Okay, so let's get back to editing again in the edit mode. And now I can grab these vertices and move them around. We just need to make one half of the car obviously, so it decreases the work a lot. Press Ctrl R to add a new edge loop and keep adding more until the curvature looks kind of right. Right now in the wireframe mode, we have some curved edges as you can see and not the real mesh. I like to have the real mesh, so I will go into the subdivision surface modifier and uncheck optimal display. This way you can see all the faces that got formed. I'm adding multiple edge loops here. You can use Ctrl R followed by your mouse scroll wheel to add multiple cuts. Let's move the vertices along this edge loop to match the blueprint. Modify the adjacent edges as well so that they follow the overall curvature. I think this is a perfect time. We should add some photographic reference, and especially for the ridge here that is not visible in the blueprint. So I'll just show you one. Click on the drop down and change the view to UV editor. Click on open. I'll just navigate to where I have my photographic references. This one comes from Tesla's official website. I have all the links in the description by the way. So you can see that we have this ridge going along this part. So we do not have that in our model. So I'll just go into the top view, select this edge loop. Maybe we should move it around a little bit. As usual, I'm using edge slide by double tapping G on the keyboard. I'll deselect these two vertices in order to maintain the overall shape. I'll move it along the Z axis. Let's take a look. You can use this button over here to hide all the overlays when you want to see the model. Or you can also use the combination of Alt, Shift and Z on the keyboard. Now we are getting somewhere. You can see that the curvature is pretty sharp and we have a really smooth transition here. We don't really want that, so I will just push this loop closer. And this time, instead of using edge slide, I will actually move it along the x-axis. Otherwise the curvature will be maintained and it will still remain a smooth curve. So I moved it closer a little bit. So we will come back to this later on. Now let's move on and make the other parts of the car. Now till now I have not used any extrude function. Now we are going to use the extrude function here. I'll just select the edges on the side here. Let's deselect this one. And I'll press E on the keyboard to extrude. If you want to select a longer edge, just click on the first vertex and control click on the final one. It will find the shortest path between them. I'll extrude once again. So I will just continue extruding until all these parts are filled up. I'll make sure not to exceed this border here in the blueprint because we will have a different separate object for that. Make sure that you are switching the views very often so that you do not lose control over the overall shape. You can get tunnel vision and you can have good shapes in one axis, but then when you move into other views, you will see that it completely looks bizarre. Make the next part of the mesh by extruding this vertices right here. I will select this vertex, press E to extrude. Let's keep on extruding. Now I will extrude this whole thing along the y-axis. Now you can see that we have left a gap here, which is why it doesn't merge properly. I'll select these two vertices, press G along the x-axis, and just when it merges, we will apply it. That should do the trick. You can see that we are getting some strange artifacts here. That is because the normal is not set properly. Just tab into edit mode, select everything with A, and then press Shift N on the keyboard. It recalculates the normals. Now it looks fine. I want a very clean ending here, so this is kind of curved right now. So make sure you have selected this. Scale it along the y-axis by 0. Just type 0 on the keyboard and it will make it perfectly align. I'll place it there. So let's select the outer boundary. I'll click here, control click to select this one, control click. So you can see here that it found the shortest path, but it was not the correct one. So it's better to have smaller increments while you're selecting using control click. Alright, so now we can use Shift E to add crease. I'll get rid of the overlay. I'll also add some crease here. Now you can see that we have some bad shading going on after we have applied the crease, especially along the edges. It will definitely improve if we have some more subdivisions, but there's another way of calculating normals in a better way. So you can come here under the object data properties, Under normals, you have auto smooth. You can change the angle here, and depending on the adjacent difference in angle between each face, it kind of calculates where to apply the auto smooth and where not to. 30 works most of the time. It is working perfectly right now in this case, so I'll leave it at 30. Before we move any further, I'll press N on the keyboard and go into view and change the focal length to a little bit higher, like 80. Then the perspective effect is a little bit smaller and it helps me work and zoom, So I kind of like working in this kind of viewport. I will go ahead and work a little bit more on this, and I will take my time as much as I can to push it towards perfection and then get back to you guys. I've spent quite some time on this one, and you can see that I've added a lot of new edge loops and edited a lot of the vertices. One thing I want you to notice is that I've added this extra edge loop here, and then I have grabbed it and pushed it along the z-axis. In that way, the crease here is more pronounced. Now, before we make some final changes, I would like to change this one to the outliner because I'm missing the outliner right now. And let's change the name of this because we'll be making a lot of these smaller parts of the car, and then we'll be able to keep track of them if we have them properly named and organized. So let's call it something. Tuck it in once again. So now I want you to take a closer look at the reference again, and you can see that the part of the car body near the wheel is pretty flat. So I'll make sure I'm in edge select mode and double click on this loop. Next, I will extrude and scale it. Now I will move it with G and then switch to the vertex select mode and place them uniformly. I will select this new edge, switch to the front view and extrude once again along the x-axis. I do not want a crease here, so I will just press Shift E and type -1. This will remove any amount of crease. And then just like earlier, press G along the x-axis and then wait till the merge. I will add another edge loop here. You can see we have some artifacts here. I think we should scale this along the x-axis by 0. Now closing this is kind of optional. If you're making the interior of the car, then you should follow the interior design as well. But we'll only be making the exterior of the car in this tutorial. So I will close all the gaps that lead to the interior so that light doesn't leak into the car, and that leads to unnecessary light bounces. You'll see what I mean when we get to the shading and lighting part. So now I can call this part of the car finished. Let's keep moving on. Let us start working on the trunk part of the car now, and I will be making it as a separate object. Now you can add a new mesh like this. You then again have to set up a mirror modifier, and then the origin will not line up properly. You have to put it in the right place again. It's a lot of issues, especially because of the modifiers that we have already set. So generally what I like to do is I just double click on this edge loop, that is the terminating edge loop of the previous object, that is this one. Just hit duplicate with Shift D, confirm it first. You can see that it is now a duplicate edge loop. I'll keep it there at its place, but I will now press P on the keyboard and selection. Now it has been separated as a different object. Now I'm in object mode and you can see these two are separate objects. So let's go to the top view. Let's first give this some name. Pull it back inside. Make sure you're in the edit mode for the trunk object. I do not like to have crease in the first place. I might add it later on. So I will just press Shift E -1. So the crease is now gone. I will quickly extrude. Now you can see we have a curve right here. So let's do that. I'll just select this vertex here. I'll press O on the keyboard. That turns on the proportional editing. You can also use this button. Let us set this to sphere. Select this one vertex, press G. And now you can use the scroll wheel to change the radius of this influence. Now when I move it along the y-axis, you can see that the other vertices are also coming up along with it. So this is called proportional editing. Now you can see that the crease that we had earlier added, it's no longer required in this case because we will have a different kind of topology here. So I will let go of this extra edge. Let us switch to the edge select mode. I will select this edge. I hope you can see it. And just press Ctrl X. It will dissolve that edge. In fact, let us dissolve this edge as well because we do not need it anymore. You can see we have a huge gap here. That is because of the crease that we just got rid of. So I will go into edit mode, select this edge loop and add the crease again. Now I wanted to notice something. We never moved this edge or this entire mesh along the z-axis except this side. Then why do you have a change in height here? It's almost like hovering over the previous mesh. Now that is because when we extruded it out, it created new faces. And when the new faces were created, since this is not a closed object, Blender misjudged the direction of the face. That is the normal. So it is currently having flipped normal here for these faces. And we just need to fix it. So make sure you're in the edit mode. Press A to select everything. Then press Shift N. Just like before. I'll add another loop cut here, just to close that gap really well. We can come back later to this and line it up better, but for now let's keep moving on with the other parts. You can see in the blueprint that we have a window here and there's a lining. Also it goes down there on the side and we have the, what's it called? The rim light. Let me start modeling them all together. Let's get a rough idea for it and then we will start refining. So I will add some loop cuts here and just get started with extruding. If you feel like the other objects are becoming a hindrance to the view, for example, when I'm in the front view, this front part of the car becomes a hindrance to the back part, which I'm actually working on, not this one. So I can hide this. And instead of hiding all the other objects one by one, you can just select this object that you are currently working on, press the / button on your keyboard, and that gives you a local view of this object only. But in that case, you cannot see the references anymore, which works fine most of the time. But since we need the reference images here, so I will just go into the outliner and do it manually. You can see that the reference images are still turned on, so we can just view the reference image as well. Now if you notice closely, there are a couple extra edges here and it makes the mesh dense in this part, especially when you're using sub-D modeling. In plain terms, you're using subdivision surface modifier in your modeling process. In that case, the low resolution base mesh that you are working on in edit mode, it is good to have uniform distribution of geometry for it. And if you're using too many edge loops to define a smooth curve, especially over a large area, it gets really hard to manage. So it is better to have fewer edge loops when you are working with subdivision surface modifier. So I will not have so many edges here. I will just select these two edge loops and press Ctrl X to dissolve them. Now these fewer edges will be much easier to handle. Now let's join these two overhanging mesh parts. I'll just select these 4 vertices and press F to make a face between them. Now let's switch to edge select mode. Now notice what I do here. You can select this edge and then press F and it will fill it up automatically. Now let's do the same for this part. Now we need to follow the vertex count of this edge. I will just select these vertices, Shift D to duplicate and move them along the z-axis. Join these two with F, switch to edge select mode. Keep pressing F until it fills up. I'll quickly add the hole for the window to sit in. In fact, I will also include the rim because I will add the rim as a separate object. Let us start bordering from here. I'll select all of this, press X, and delete all the vertices. I'll add some crease to this because you can see in the blueprint that it points out a little bit. A very slight crease. Right now you can see that it is giving us a hard edge. That's because of the auto smooth checkbox that we have turned on here. We didn't do it on this particular object, but the previous object had it. And since we duplicated that object to make this, so all the properties were inherited. So I'll just uncheck it for now and we'll see what we can do later on. I will quickly go ahead and add some more crease and make some finer adjustments. By the way, with the wheel, I will repeat the same thing that I did for the first one and also close this gap along the x-axis. So I'll work on that later. A lot of refining needs to be done. Especially you can see that there's this ridge here that goes up. In fact, let me show you some more references. I will load in another one. And you can see that we have a sharp ridge right here. And I hope you do not miss that. We just need to make sure that we have an edge loop which protrudes up along the z-axis. So you can see that we are already starting to see a ridge form here. We just need to pay more attention to the reference image and keep on refining it and carving it out. I think it's a good time to talk about edge flow now. So in an all quads model like this, where all the polygons that make up the mesh are quadrilaterals, that is, they have 4 edges. Now, if we have such a clean mesh, then we can add loop cuts easily. Alright, let me show you. If we had any kind of triangles, for example this one, I will select these 2 vertices and press J and join them. So now we have a triangulated face. These are 2 triangles. Now, since we have a triangle now, Blender doesn't factor in the loop cut through this face anymore. So it's a dead end. So you cannot make further subdivisions easily. You cannot make adjustments later on to your model like we can do right now. Like, see, you have the loop cuts easily going through them. So that's why having a all quads model is essential if you want to have a clean model and geometry. Now, what is edge flow? So if you have all quads model, now you can see that this loop cut, if we apply it here, goes through this way. This is the path followed by the edge loop. Now, similarly from this face, if we just move our cursor a little bit, we can see that there's a new loop cut along this direction. So how does Blender know that this loop cut goes this way? Loop cut could have gone this way, but that doesn't happen, and Blender knows that that is not what we intend. And we kind of rely on Blender for calculating that. Now let's say we want to change that. We want this new edge to be flowing in a different direction. So let's say we have this loop cut. Now instead of keeping it this way, we want the loop cut to reroute this way. And also from here, we want it to reroute this way. Now you can say that should be pretty easy depending on what we just did using the triangles. So you can see that the loop cut currently wants to go through this way. So we just need to obstruct this one, right? Let's try. I will select these 2 vertices and join them with J. Now it cannot go through it anymore. Now since we want the loop cut to reroute at this point, so let us obstruct any further movement. I will just join these 2 and make it a triangle. So for this part of the loop, it's fine. This is where we want the loop to flow. For the rest of the loop, we want it to go through this way and this loop to go through this way. How can we do that? Now that's the problem. You can have triangles obstruct the way of a edge loop. So in a way, changing the edge flow. But now you have triangles in your model. You have introduced non-editable parts, which will obstruct any new edge loop or any easy editing to your model. So let us look at a few different solutions that I generally use. So first one would be to actually add the edge loops. So I added 2 edge loops here. We wanted one of the reroutes to happen from this intersection. That's why I added 2 edge loops that will intersect there. Now what I generally do is I just select the remaining parts which we do not want. Let's say these are waist edges, and then we dissolve them. Now you can see we have a triangle. So naturally the next step is to get rid of the triangles. In this case, it seems to be pretty easy right here. I will just select these vertices and press J. That will join them. I'll move this around a little bit. Alright. Now you can see that we still have 2 triangles here. I'll select this edge and dissolve it. Now this has become 3 different quads. Now we are again back to all quads. But you can see that the edge has been rerouted. All the other edges still follow the old way of adding edge loops, but only for this set of faces. Anything you add in between them will follow this edge direction now. Now there can be another brute force way of doing the same thing. I'll undo the whole thing first. Now we are back to what we had. Instead of adding edge loops, I sometimes start drawing directly. Now we can do that by using the knife tool. You can press K on your keyboard and you get this knife tool, which can basically draw points. And once you confirm it with the spacebar, you have a new edge. So now I'm just literally going to brute force the edge that we want. So I'll just draw through this, not caring about any quads or anything. So now you can see we kind of have what we wanted, but there are a lot of new challenges popping up. The triangles. You can see that we have a triangle here, here, and there, also here. So these are all the triangles that we have. I color coded the faces. Let's get rid of the subdivision surface modifier so that we can see it clearly. So we already know how to solve this one. Just join this, get rid of this edge, and we should be fine. Let's work on these. Let's see. We want the loop to flow this way. So I will select this one and then select this vertex. Press M on the keyboard. Now it can merge at the last vertex. So the merged vertex is placed at the last vertex that we selected. We still have nothing solved. I will select this edge, right click, subdivide. Let's add 2 cuts. Switching to the vertex select mode, we now have 2 new vertices here. Let's join these 2. So we have solved this part of the puzzle. Now if we join this 2, switch to edge select, Ctrl X. Now we have something happening here, but we do not have the correct edge flow. It is kind of leaking this way, but we wanted it to go this way. So let's see what we can do. But on the bright side, I think we have almost got there. I will perform a few final moves and then we should get there. Let's select this vertex and this vertex. Join them with J. Now we have this new vertex in the middle. I'll press Ctrl X to delete it. Make sure you are in the vertex select mode. So let's select this vertex and this one and press J. Now if you look closely, this and this are 2 separate edges. So this is a quad. And also this one is a quad. So let's try. Ctrl R. Here we go. We have the complete edge loop. But let's not forget about the final little triangle that we have here. Now the final piece to this puzzle seems to be really simple. So I'll just select these 2 vertices and press J. Now just get rid of this edge in the middle. Once you've got rid of that edge, you will see that the vertex here is also gone. So I'll just press Ctrl R, click here, and it will add a new vertex. So you can see that we got rid of all triangles. And now you can just test that we have a new edge loop here that follows the exact pattern that we wanted. So let's re-enable the subdivision, add smooth shading, and now we are back. So I will add some more crease to some of the edges, like this edge right here, a slight amount of crease here. I will align the newly made edge loops to the blueprint. Let's add a loop cut here. For this part, let me show you another reference. Now this time this is not from the Tesla website. Literally I had to get it from Wikipedia. You can see that this part of the car is kind of pushed back a little. Now we will not be making the metal or the logo. So instead of having a hard cut like this, we will just push it inside and have a smooth transition from above the rear lights. So let's go to face select mode and press C on the keyboard this time. The circle select feature, let us select all these faces. We need to push it inside. You can use G, but it won't give you the desired result as in the reference image. So what we want to do is we will extrude it. If you press E on the keyboard, it extrudes it inside. Now, couple things. Number one, sometimes extrude doesn't detect the correct alignment, and so the axis that it extrudes along is kind of screwed. So you can use Alt E and you can select extrude faces along normals. This way you always get the correct orientation. Now the second thing is you can see this weird artifact here. So make sure you are in face select mode and just press X for faces. So I will go into edge select mode this time. Scale along the x-axis by 0. And then we can push it towards each other until it merges. And just like we planned earlier, we will not have this sharp depression. We'll kind of ease out the curvature here. Now you can see that there's a separation going on here because the trunk can obviously be opened. So what I generally do is that I just check the lines in the blueprint where this separation is taking place and then attempt to kind of line up one of the edge loops along this line. Now I have lined up 2 edge loops along the blueprint separation line. Then press Ctrl B to add an edge bevel. I will switch to face select mode, press X on the keyboard, select faces. Now I will go ahead and add some crease to the newly formed edge loops. I will also add some extra edge loops for sharp edges. It's time that we separate these 2 parts into actual different objects. I'll select all with A, press P by loose parts. Now we have 2 separate objects here. Now let's quickly rename this new object as body back. Now as usual, keep chipping away at the model and refine it as much as you can. I will come back with the finished one. Now this is the refined version and I'm pretty happy with this. You can see that I have done quite a lot of work on this part. Added some crease along this direction, many more edge loops here. Also if you notice here, I have extruded this part out, really close edge loops here in order to give it that sharpness. Also a lot of work went into this part in order to make sure that they both line up properly since they were now 2 different objects. Make sure the object is selected. Now for the slice that goes through this part, I'll just add a boolean modifier to it. By default, operation is set to difference and that should be fine. I'll go into the edit mode, select one of the nearby edges, press Shift S, cursor to selected. Now we have the cursor here. So now we can add a plane here. I'll scale it down a little bit. Go into the object properties, display as where. Now let's go back to the object. I'll use the picker here and pick up this object. Let's select the plane add a solidify modifier. Let's go back and check the height of it. It's a little bit tilted as well. So you can see you have a lot of control when you use booleans for the cuts. You can also change the thickness from here. Let's bring back the initial model. And this is how it looks. Now I will quickly do some organizational stuff. Like this plane, it's inside the car body collection. I don't like that. I'll move it out into a new collection. Let's call it booleans because we'll have more slicing, so it's nice to have a new collection for that. Let's start working on the car doors. For this purpose, I will use a little bit different approach. I will use the loop tools. So you can go into Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, search for loop tools. This comes by default with Blender, but it might not be enabled. So make sure you have checked that. Now if you go into Edit mode and right click, you will see you have the loop tools menu. So let us get started. I will select this mesh, go into Edit mode, select these 4 edges. Duplicate with Shift D, press P to separate by selection. Now you have this as a separate object. Do not care about the double lines, that is because of the solidify modifier. I'll do the same for this one. I'll select the 2 new meshes, press Ctrl J to join them. Now this is one object. I'll go into Edit mode, right side view. I'll select this set of vertices here, duplicate with Shift D, move along the y-axis. I'll place the vertices by hand. I'll select these vertices in the middle, press Shift E, -1 to get rid of the crease. You can see the vertices on this loop here is a lot. That will cause problems when we use loop tools because we need to keep the same number of vertices. So I will start dissolving the vertices here with Ctrl X. Now we are ready to use the loop tools. I will select all of the vertices, right click, loop tools, loft. You can play around with the settings here. I will add some more segments. I will give it a smooth shading. I will select this edge loop down the middle. Press Ctrl B to add a bevel. Shift E to add crease. X to delete the faces in between. I will also add crease along these edges. I will also add supporting edge loops, which will give you that sharp corner. Now I will work a little bit on refining it and come back with the finished one. You can see that I've added a boolean object here for the cut instead of using the bevel method that I just showed you. This is because I wanted to use the thickness feature here. If I want to adjust it later on, you can keep any one you like. I'll just move on to the next part now. Now for the rest of the car, I'm not going to go into the details and just throw in a quick overview of how I approached it, because most of the techniques that you can use for this kind of modeling we have already discussed. You can just use it as an exercise as well. If you want to kind of apply whatever you've learned so far, this will be the best opportunity to try that. And moreover, you have the blend files available, so you can go ahead and download that and take any reference if you want. So this part of the car will be the base on which the whole car is sitting. So that's the final part to it. Now we can move on into making the windows for the car. I'm just going to use a subdivided plane as the starting point, and then I will just keep extruding. And as usual, if you're facing any kind of issue while following this tutorial, because I know this is not a very step-by-step tutorial, I'm kind of giving you an overview here, then you can write that down in the comment section. You can give a timestamp, that helps. So that should be it for the windows. And you can see that I've left a little bit of a gap. That's because I will add some rubber lining and stuff like that the reference image has. Now, I don't really want too much light bounces going on behind the wheels, which is not going to be visible. So I added these 2 simple meshes there. Nothing fancy going on, just made it out of the simple cylinder that comes with Blender. So that should bring us towards the end of this tutorial. Now we have the base model of the car, and we will go into the details in the next part. Thank you so much for watching till the end of this tutorial. The other parts are already uploaded, so go check out the playlist and let me know what you thought.